All right, and we're back. In this video, I'm going to show you how we actually made a dashboard for our Voiceflow bots in Airtable. If you use Voiceflow at all in the past, you will realize quickly that the dashboard feature isn't fantastic, for a lack of a better word. So we actually just went ahead and used the data that we got from Voiceflow, transferred that data over to Airtable using automation that we already had set up for leads, conversations, conversions, etc. Then we just use this data to actually create an entire dashboard so that we can see at a glance how well our assistant is performing, how well the business in general is performing, as you can see here, the amount of issues that people had, the leads that came in, the conversions, the fail safe, which is in this case is the amount of times that the assistant wasn't able or got stuck somewhere along the conversation. You can see the lead status, the amount of conversations that are happening. Keep in mind, this is all dummy data, the leads in progress, and also the latest conversations. I want to make clear the benefits of this dashboard because while sure it looks nice, the main purpose of it is that you can now give access to your clients if you're building this for other people or for yourself. You don't have to scroll through your entire Voiceflow account just to see how well your bot is performing. You can now get access to that in Airtable and you can share this thing with anybody else who wants to see the same information. Second part of that is you get to actually see the impact of the bot on Airtable in real time. You get to see the amount of money it's generated you, the amount of leads it's brought you, or you can also change this for the amount of hours it saved you, depending on what its job is. The amount of customer issues that were saved, because our robot actually handles whenever somebody has sort of a bad experience, they could come here trying to get that solved to keep those words off of Google reviews and that sort of thing. And overall, this is a much cleaner way of understanding what's happening with your assistant at any time. There's a couple of different things that we have to set up to get this working. The first one is obviously just the Airtable, which is where all the data is coming from, which like this. And then we're going to jump into Voiceflow real quick just to show you how to set up or how we actually set up to send information over. And then last but not least, we'll actually go ahead and build the entire from scratch. It's pretty simple, but I'll take my time walking you through it just so that you can go ahead and just follow. Now, if you're new here, my name's Taha. I actually run ALLMYTE Global Development. If you're a company or you're an agency looking for any sort of consultant, anything along those lines, all the links will be provided in the description. But let's get back into building our dashboard. All right, and we are now in Voiceflow, which is part one of, I believe, three on how we're actually going to populate this Airtable dashboard. It's actually quite simple. This is probably the easier part of it, depending on how complicated you want to get with it. But just for this example, the only thing that you would have to add in Voiceflow, and I'll show you this on a blank database because the other ones are for clients, unfortunately. But all you got to do is you'll go to Voiceflow. We'll zoom out a little bit. The way this is going to work is that every time somebody says something, whether it's the user or the assistant, we're making a call to Airtable to push data. So if it's the user, then we're just putting whatever they just said. If it's the robot or the bot in this case, we're just pushing whatever the bot said. So for example, if I have a text card that says, how can I help? I'll connect this to there. And now if you're not familiar with Voiceflow, or if you're using another type of data set, or if you're pulling information from somewhere else, then feel free to skip around to the dashboard build, which I'll try to put either a link in the description or I'll put it in like the YouTube section sort of things. But go back to Voiceflow and then let's put a listen card, which if you've been using Voiceflow at all, this should be pretty familiar. The text card is this, what does the robot say? And the listen is just capturing whatever the user says. And we'll link these two. Pretty straightforward until now. Here's where things get different. Is now what we're going to do is after each of these cards, we're going to put a API call. And I'm actually going to go ahead and bring one from our other project. Now, so far, everything should be pretty familiar if you've used Voiceflow at all before. Here's where things get a bit interesting. The way that we populate our Airtable database with every single word that's said on the user side and on the assistant side, or on the chatbot side, is by creating two different cards, which you can take from the API step right here. One of them we call VF question, which is in this context from what the bot is asking. So they're the ones asking the question, which in this would which in this case would be how can I help? And on the other side, whatever the user answers to the VF question, we've called it VF answer. And we just simply attach these to their respective notes. So whenever there is a question that the bot asks, I put VF question. Whenever there is an answer that's to be expected, I put VF answer. Diving deeper into both of these cards, VF question is pretty straightforward and they're very similar. You can duplicate them. There's one difference between both of them. First of all, the only difference I want here, it's in VF question, the field here is a VF question, obviously. And then whatever your data you're sending through the API is whatever data is connected to it. So for example, here is how can I help? So now I would just put how can I help? Now I am aware that Voiceflow has like a custom variable for each last bot message. Here it's called last response. I don't use that. It's really up to you. And on the Voiceflow answer side of things, here's pretty straightforward. You can just copy paste this and it's always going to be last utterance because we're always putting it right after the capture user reply to last utterance. Actually setting these up, we have to send them somewhere. So we're going to need a post URL link. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hop into Airtable and I'll show you how to set those up. So jumping into Airtable, whatever data you have is irrelevant. The ones that are important to us, at least in this video, is the VF question, Voiceflow question, and VF answer or Voiceflow answer, which are these two. This is just dummy data. You can go ahead and ignore it. And whenever you are in this table, go ahead and click on help on the top right and on API documentation. And this is what's going to allow us to find the URL link that we need in order to actually send over information from Voiceflow whenever it comes in. You can go ahead and click on conversations table. And then you can have a bunch of different URLs. And the one we're looking for is create record. Because keep in mind, the reason why we're looking at the conversations table is that on this, you're looking at conversations. So now that we've found it, you can go ahead and just take the URL link that's right here. Well, it's api.table, et cetera, et cetera. That's the URL link that you need. Go ahead and copy that into the Voiceflow dashboard. Copy that right there. Authorization, you can leave it as is. Bearer as well. Now, what you want to put right after bearer is your API token. Now, this is going to be different for each person as well as the API or as well as the URL code. However, to actually go ahead and create your URL token or your Airtable token, let's call it, go back into the API or the documentations, scroll all the way back up. Now, it should say something along the lines of where's authentication. There we go. Airtable uses simple token-based authentication. As it says, just go on create tokens. Fantastic. Once you're in there, you'll have the ability to actually create a new token, which is going to take you to this screen. Go ahead and name this whatever you would like. And one thing that I suggest that we do for all of it, just to avoid any problems down the road, is to actually go ahead and give it all of the access that you want, but under one base. Then once you've done all that, go ahead and select your base. Then once you've done, click create token. And now this is going to show you this one time. You can ignore this. It's going to be deleted afterwards. Make sure not to share this publicly because this is like the key to your house. Anybody who has this key can enter it, use your house as they will, as they wish, right under your nose. Once you have the token key, go back into Voiceflow and just put that right here. And that is pretty much all you need on Voiceflow's side of things. Do the exact same thing with the VF question. Bear here, copy conversations. So to summarize, create two different cards. One of them is VF question. The other one is VF answer. On VF questions or on both of them, they have the same URL. What differs is in VF questions, with the field that we have are question and identifier, which you can ignore. And on VF answer, fields we have are VF answer and the last utterance. That's what separates, or that's what makes a difference between whenever this gets sent over, what columns are going to field, the VF question or the VF answer. Once you set that up, we went ahead and connected it to every single node that we had in our assistant, which is quite time consuming when you first start doing this, but the benefits far outweigh the 15, 20 minutes or 30 minutes that it takes to actually go ahead and set this all up. Now, this is set up, we can jump back into Airtable to actually go ahead and build our dashboard based off of the information that's coming from here. And we are now in the Airtable Interfaces tab, which is what is probably the most interesting part of this whole video. To actually go ahead and get to the Interfaces tab, all you have to do is when you go in Airtable, you're going to have a bunch of data, which in this one should be blank because I just made it. All you're going to go ahead and do is just click on Interfaces, and then it's going to give you a button that says Start Building. It's going to give you the options to choose a layout from a list to a gallery to a Kanban, which is just another way of organizing tasks from done to be done, completed, progress, etc. Calendar, timeline, dashboard, form, record review, record summary, and blank. We started from a blank canvas, but feel free to go ahead and take a look at these more for inspiration. So jumping back into our dashboard, you'll see there's a couple different elements, which are all just copy and paste, but have different sources. We've got we have two charts, a gallery of leads in progress, and then in the bottom, we just have a big list of the latest conversations. Now you can go ahead and add as much as you would like to this, but I think as a starting point to your clients to at least understand what's going on in the back end, this is all that's required to get. You can get fancy with it and add colors and add more intricate designs, but that is not the purpose of this. It's really just to how can I simply give information to somebody. Starting from the top left, I'm going to go all the way down. Starting with generated, which is pretty straightforward. How much money has our assistant generated us? The information is getting 16,000 isn't a number anywhere on the database. What it's actually doing is that if you go look on the right-hand side, it says source, which is where is this number coming from? Coming from conversions. So if I would go and take a look at the conversions table, you're going to see on the top, on the right-hand side, you can have a bunch of different values, which is the worth of a said job. So 3,500, 2,000, 1,000, 5,500, and 4,000. Fantastic. Now, I want to know, okay, well, how much are all of these worth? How much money has this thing actually made me? 16,000. But I'm not going to go ahead and make a cell dedicated to this number in Airtable when I can just go ahead on the right-hand side back again, take all the records, because keep in mind, these are only records that have been conversions. And we're getting these conversions from an automation, meaning that whenever a lead is set to sold, it then moves into that table. If you want a video detailing more about how we use Airtable to automate these, automate movement between tables, for example, let me know. But if we scroll down, you have two different options. One of them is record count, which is simply going to give you how many records there are, which 5, if you remember, or you can do a field summary. In this one, what we want to do is take the field that is important to us, which is the value, and then we want to take not the maximum, the sum of all the different values that are in that table, which in this case was 5, which was all 5 of the records, just one plus the other. And that gave us $16,000, which is how we got this number. Okay, that's great. Now, to change the appearance, what it looks like, simply click on appearance. You'll see light cyan, light green, default gray, etc. You can give it a title as well, which is, let's call it some jobs, just as an example. You have a subtitle. You can go ahead and mess around with these. These are more for aesthetic purposes. We use the blue actually because it's the first thing people look at, but you can change these however you would like. Moving on, then we have conversions, which now should make sense in how we got this number, because it's actually the exact same source as sum of jobs, but instead of counting the amount or summing, the different values, we're just taking, okay, well, how many records are there in said table? And if you remember, there were 5. That's how we got conversions. Same thing, change appearance, change its colors, change its name. Now leads, it's actually very similar to the other one where we're just taking the data from the leads table like this, and we're just counting every single one, which gave us 10. Same with customer issues, which is just our daily counter of how many, because every time a complaint or every time an appointment is starting being made, we have a counter going on in the background, and that updates this Airtable right here, like this. This was automatic. This was manually filled up just for this example, but that's what fills out customer issues. And all we're doing is changing the source. And however, this is a very important point, actually. We're not counting every single record that shows up. We only want to count the records that show under customer issues or complaints. So what we've done is under records, we're choosing not all records like this one or the conversions or the sum of jobs. We only want records that have the complaint tag associated. So what we're doing is we're saying, look, only count records where the complaint field isn't empty. If we go back in data, you'll see that the only ones that we're counting are these ones, complaint field. That's it. Everything else is ignored apart from these. That's why we had number 5, even though the rest of the table is full. Questions asked is the same thing, but instead of being about the number of complaints, I believe this is just for the Q&A, the exact same data table. And failsafe is the same one, but just where failsafe is activated. I hope this is starting to make sense. It's pretty intuitive once you get a hang of it. You can log this out within a few hours. Now, to get more of an eagle's eye view of things about how the bot is performing over time, for example, you might want to get a look at how many messages are being sent or how many conversations are being started every single day over the period of a week, a month, a year eventually. So all we're doing is we're adding and whenever you want to add an element, by the way, what we're going to do is click on the bottom left, add elements. You'll have text, dividers, grids, Kanbans, gallery, lists, etc. All we've done is we've taken a chart grid, a chart element, which I can put right here, and then we're just changing the chart element to whatever it is that we want. In this example, it's a bar chart. The data is conversations, which is the amount of conversations that are being started. And what we're doing is we're saying, give me every single record from that table. The x-axis or the horizontal axis is going to be date submitted, which is our time variable. And the bucket can be day. You can have by minutes. It's not super useful unless you have a really, really big website, I guess, where you have a bunch of traffic going through it. It makes more sense to just do it by day. And order is ascending, which means the first date is the one where I want to start. And then on the y-axis, you have identifiers. Now, this is a bit different to what you might have, but we don't want to see every single message or the amount of messages. We just want to see how many different conversations are being had. The difference between those two is that a message can only pertain to one conversation, but a conversation can have multiple messages. So how many users have used it, basically? We're using identifiers to identify each different user. But if you're more interested in how many messages are actually being sent, which means that if one user, for example, had 100 different messages, this would be way out of whack just because of that one specific user. But obviously, that really depends more of the sector that you're in and what the purpose of this dashboard is. And right before last in this section, we have a lead status, which is just taken from go back into data. In the leads tab, we have different statuses from new to contacted, booked, sold, lost, unreachable. All we've done is went into we just copy and pasted a different chart. Like I mentioned, go back to element, go into chart, and then you'll have one that should be a pie chart. Yeah, right here, pie chart. All we've done is we've called it lead status. Source is leads. The record is every single record. And the category is a field, or what is being separated by is the status of each field. You can change it by value, which would separate the value of it. In this case, it's not super useful because every single job has been different value. But if you have sort of the same job, if you only have like 3 different price points, then this might be useful. But on a contractor or on a custom basis, it doesn't really add much, which is why we have the status, which allows you to see, okay, well, where are my leads? And you can, if you notice the color changed here, you can go ahead and change the color from just using Airtable. And that is lead status. After that, we just have the number of messages, which is the exact same thing as what we had previously. But this one is coming from conversation, which is another table right here, which is just the amount of these records. Keep in mind, even if a record is blank, if it is created, it counts as a record. It's not like a spreadsheet like Excel where you can create records with nothing in them. Every single record that's created, whether blank or not, will add onto the interface. I just added a record, even if it was blank. Now there's one more message. Right. Fantastic. So that covers basically the first half of the entire dashboard. Now, moving down from the first half of the Airtable, we have leads in progress. So it's just actually pretty straightforward. All we've done is we've taken the leads data table and we've just applied a filter to them to only show leads that haven't been either lost or haven't been sold just yet, which are by default leads in progress. So that's any new lead, any lead that's contacted, any lead that's booked in, whatever that case may be. So to do so, all we've done is we added a new element right here and we use I believe it's gallery, correct. We'll use the gallery tab. And what we've done is the source for this one is going to be leads. Go ahead and delete this. You can make, by the way, these smaller or bigger just by dragging and dropping these. Then the source is leads. And this is, I think it's important to bring up because this is the first element in this entire dashboard where that is editable. Now, the reason it is so, it's we also want our users or our partners to be able to interact with this dashboard in order to make effective or to make important changes. So if a lead goes from somebody who is contacted to somebody who's actually sold, that's a pretty big difference because that's just going to impact the sum of job. That's going to impact the conversion rate. It's going to impact the effectiveness of this assistant. So what we've done is if you click on the element that we're talking about, all I want to do is put it as editable. And what that's going to allow users to do is whenever they use this dashboard, they can edit this specific element, not what it looks like, but just the information within it. And you can also allow users to open record detail, which is whenever they click on an element, they can see more information about this. You can allow them to comment, which we have right here. The title, we've made it as the address, but you can put it in whatever field you'd like. We put the action button, which is what the sold thing is, right? So all we've done is we have one action. Let me go back. If you see right under comments and under title, there's something called actions. Click on that. Click on action right here again. And that's going to say sold. What this is going to do is whenever somebody presses on this button, so this button right here, take an action, which is going to update a record. What it's going to do is going to take the record source, which is the lead detail, and they do one update. What it's going to do is going to send the status of said lead and update it to sold. That's all it's going to do. And then we have like an appearance thing so that it looks nice. So whenever somebody, before they click on it, it's going to say sold exclamation point, and it's going to be in blue. Once they actually click on it, it'll just be in green with no exclamation point. For example, so that looks like, and you notice how it disappeared. That's because this is only being filtered for leads that haven't been sold just yet. If I go ahead and bring it back, scrolling down a little bit, you'll see what else have we changed. We've done a bit to change the appearance, right? The 4 color conditions. Well, all we've done is that if the status is sold, then it's in green, but this doesn't really matter because it'll never show up here. If the status is unreachable, it'll be in gray. If it's booked, it'll be in blue. If it's lost, it'll be in yellow. Apart from that, you can change the number of rows that you have for each page. You can display the name fields or not, which can be useful if it's not already obvious. And you can show the label as leads. You can go ahead and move these around to show which one is more important to you. For example, if the status of a specific lead isn't super important, you can move that. For us, it's basically the most important thing that we want to see, or the first thing we want to see, which is why we had it at the top. Fantastic. And scrolling down past leads in progress. And if it wasn't clear, by the way, the source is leads. The last thing that I'm going to talk about in this Airtable dashboard is basically just we're taking the data from conversations. And just keep in mind, this is still just dummy data. We're just basically taking this whole thing and just showing it as the latest conversations that are currently happening, just to get a feel of what people are asking, right? Instead of having to send transcripts or having to send weekly or daily reminders about what's going on, they can go in real time and see what exactly is being asked on your assistant. This is by far the easiest one to set up. All you've got to do is add a new element, add a new grid, and then connect said grid to whatever source you want. For this case, we have conversations. It was fantastic. And you can make this wider or narrow depending on your liking. All records, no options, the fields that we're showing. And this is really just to see the latest conversation. There's not too much to be said, to be honest. It's pretty straightforward, right? Once you've done all of that, you should have something that looks at least similar to this. You can go ahead and add more elements, or you can go ahead and add more functionality to it. But keep in mind that the purpose of Airtable isn't a customer portal per se. It's a representation of the data in a more visually appealing way. If you're looking for a customer portal, something like software would make more sense, where people can log in, they can see information that's just for them. And this also has this option where you can send them only for specific emails, but it's not a complete solution to a customer portal. It's really, and I'm emphasizing this to make clear, this is meant to display information already within your database in a more digestible way. Because you can just take a screenshot of this, they can send it to their friends, they can send it to referrals as well. It is meant to show the benefit of your product or of your assistant and how well it's performing. On that note, If you have any questions, if I miss anything, if there's a topic you want me to dive further into, maybe in Airtable, maybe in VoiceFlow, maybe even softer, let me know. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Like I said, all links, if you want to reach me, are going to be down below in the description. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next video. Thank you.